So Rosalind, I think one of the best examples of tools to manage Commissioner-Manager relations was the handbook that we developed in New Zealand and that we led together. And this handbook really brought together, I think for the first time, our interpretation of the legislation we were operating under and the mandate that we had. It was also really being clear about the respective roles and responsibilities of commissioners, the senior executive officer and managers and staff. And also, I think, agreed some ways of working which helped us address the complexities of the NHRI structures. And you and I led it, but really critically we developed it together with all the commissioners and managers as well, so that there was a lot of debate and discussion, a huge number of iterations if you remember, but what we did end up with was something that we all both understood and shared and owned and operated to.
And we've found that there's been a lot of interest in the Commissioner Handbook from commissions right around the world, from national human rights institutions. But I think what we've been clear with them is you cannot pick up somebody else's handbook and simply apply it to your own institution. The process is as important as the final outcome, and so going through it and developing your own agreements about those relationships is essential to its success. And actually, interestingly enough, that applies when commissions change, when the membership of commissions change as well. They really need to go through it themselves.
That's absolutely right, and at the New Zealand Commission, when we moved to a new group of commissioners, they absolutely needed to go through it again and make their own interpretation of their mandate and determine with others how they were going to work for that era of commission, rather than just inheriting what had gone before.
Well, the handbook was something that you very much wanted and saw as a key to being able to operate effectively as the Executive Director of the Commission. I think in retrospect, it became of value to everyone, because when there were tensions or questions, we could check on what was it, how had we agreed to operate. So it's not a magic wand. It doesn't solve all the problems, but it helps as a guide and as a basis of agreement to those very critical but quite challenging working relationships. So it would be really helpful if you could take us through what happened, how it came about, and what the outcomes were.
Okay. So as senior executive officers, I'm sure we've all felt like this at times. Out on our own, isolated, and on insecure ground. The very structure of NHRIs can lead to this. They make our roles as SEOs foggy and unclear, hard to see the wood for the trees, and we can see the light, but we can't get to it. The legislation of most NHRIs takes commissioners beyond the traditional governance role to delivering human rights activities, and this means working with staff directly. In my view, that's absolutely appropriate to the role and function of an NHRI, getting the benefit of the lived experience of commissioners in our work. But it does make for a complex set of relationships. Also at the governance level, commissioners are on independent warrants, and that can be interpreted as answerable to no one, not to the other commissioners, and certainly not to the senior executive officer. Add in the expectations of civil society and government and international standards, and NHRIs are complicated institutions. So what can this lead to? Mixed messages about our role as SAOs, our space to operate alongside commissioners, and tripping up over each other. Commissioners asking staff to do work directly so we don't have an overview of the programme. Projects growing in scope so we can't manage workloads. No space to work on infrastructure to run a healthy organisation or to meet accountability requirements which keep us safe from scrutiny. And lots of surprises for everyone. Staff, commissioners, the SEO, and most of them not nice ones. It's enough to confuse even some of the world's smartest and most successful people. And of course, it's not all to do with opaque roles and legislation. Sometimes it's simply about power and the wish to have control. Some of it legitimate, some not. Some springs from the nature of commissioner appointments. the expectations of community and government, and perceived pressure to deliver and be seen to deliver. And some can spring from the SEO, wanting the calm, safe world of traditional governance and management relationships. Whatever factors produce this situation, it's not a great or effective working environment. Commissioners feel frustrated. As I said, they feel their reputation is at stake, and legitimately they want to make the most of their limited time. They're subject to external pressure for results, and they want the resource and the organisation to be available without tortuous negotiation and re-litigation at every step. Staff feel squashed. They want to be creative, contribute ideas, feel they are part of what they're delivering, and have some say about their workloads. And here's me, the SEO, stuck in the middle between two large and immovable forces, and each with strong foundations for their particular perspectives. As a result, there's some locking of horns, and everyone feels out on their own. And sadly, that's not my holiday snap. So recognising all this, we at the New Zealand Commission decided to try to get to a better place. Timing helped. Commissioners had been there for a while and recognised things needed to change, as the current confusion wasn't working for them. And I was relatively new, so I could stand removed from some of the more tense history and could ask the naive questions. We started by looking at the legislation, the rule books, the New Zealand Human Rights Act, but also other relevant acts for our role as a public entity in New Zealand. That included the Public Finance Act, the Crown Entities Act, things that provided how our institutions of our nature should operate in New Zealand. We also looked at international standards, especially the Paris Principles, and good practice information from the New Zealand Institute of Directors. It was important to get the full suite. It avoided cherry picking. For example, commissioners on independent warrants, that's provided for in the Human Rights Act, but it's mitigated by the duty to act as a board in the Crown Entities Act and the Public Finance Act, which means independence can't be exercised at the expense of accountability. And all these key elements were referenced in the handbook. But we did find that the legislation, particularly when taken together, didn't in itself provide the clarity we sought. So we had to agree how we would interpret it for ourselves. We debated, and those of you who attended the 2010 ICC Biennial Conference will recognise the Scottish Parliament here. And we definitely had some arguments. After all, we were sorting out where power lay, which is the history of the world's conflict in a microcosm. And we also had to work through the tendency to stop short of a conclusion where a clear decision might be uncomfortable for some. But we also had some really good in-depth discussion too, quite informal and supportive and encouraging. The critical outcome was a shared ownership of the conclusions, of how we decided to interpret the legislation and move forward together. And this was actually the most important result. The process we used was actually more important than the document we produced. And it actually took a year. We needed to give it this time for everyone to assimilate the perspectives of others. So where did we get to? A clear pathway. The fog and the trees had disappeared, although not a path without potholes in it. A process for decision-making and resource allocation, which took account of the needs and contributions of all parts of the organisation. The strategic direction set by Commission, but balanced with management functions of running an effective organisation and building in a role for staff advice and involvement. An appropriate level of internal accountability. We didn't have to report the number of paper clips, but on delivering Commissioner priorities. And reporting has also reduced over time as trust has grown. It provided terms and conditions for Commissioners and an induction process, and clarity on roles with levels of authority clearly delegated. Essentially, a framework for moving forward smoothly and together. It's a good framework, but it's no substitute for good relationships. And it only works if you've got good communication, one-on-one and in a group. Trust, which is something that of course has to be earned and it doesn't just arrive with a job contract or a warrant, and flexibility on everyone's part. You have to make it your business to make it work. So has it? Well, we definitely got into calmer waters. There was a lot of plain sailing, but definitely some capsizes too, particularly when we got busy and didn't take the time or had the will to look after relationships. And the handbook did help here. It's not perfect, but we could use it as a touchstone to draw us back and to right the boat again. So did I still feel like this? Sometimes. The challenges didn't go away. NHRIs are dynamic beasts, full of passionate people, and written documents only take you so far. But mostly, we were huddled together, working collectively for the benefit of all of us.